Well, we're here on Super Bowl Sunday on February 9th of 2025, which means we are two-thirds of the way through the season, and the Blues are 25, 26, and 5. They sit at 6 in the Central Division with 55 points. They're starting to, well, they're not starting to, but they have pretty much fallen out of the playoff race. But today we'll be evaluating the Blues season by grading players and Blues personnel using a tiers system. Who's done well, who's underperforming, and what can we expect for the remaining third of the season from all these players. We'll also throw in some discussion on some recent news around Zachary Bolduc. We've got the Four Nations coming up with a couple of Blues players being featured. We'll talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. It's John and Alec with you as always. If you are new to the show, we are a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week, most weeks, at the very least, at least once a week. We cover all things Blues, from the NHL level club to prospects, rumors, free agency, trades, draft, all kinds of stuff. So if that's your cup of tea, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video. Those are the best ways to help us out. We're almost to 300 subscribers. That would be huge if y'all can help us reach that milestone. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can follow and rate there. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok if you want to follow on socials. See a lot of cool other content, as well as announcements for when we're going live and if we're having any special guests, what the topic is, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to follow along with us on all of those platforms. And thanks for tuning in on your Super Bowl Sunday. For those that are watching live, we know the big game is in a few hours, so we won't keep you too long, but we're here at the two-thirds mark. Alec, the Blues are, as I said at the top, 25, 26, and 5. They've got 55 points. They're 6th in the Central, but they are 8 points behind the second wild card after making it within 1 point at one point. And they have slid. They have slid, losing a lot of games lately. Comment in the chat asking about Zach Bolduc. We will get to that pretty soon here, but I just wanted to start at the top with you, Alec. How has the season gone so far? You can take it from the viewpoint of the entire season, or since this is our second check-in, our second tiers episode, maybe over the last 20, 25 or so games, the last third of the season. I mean, how would you describe it at this point?
I mean, I think it's been disappointing for sure. Definitely not the outcome all of us were hopeful for. But that being said, I don't think it's been unsalvageably bad like I think 2022-23 was. And maybe it's harder to watch this season because they keep getting so close and then letting us down. But very little good came out of the 2022-23 season, with the exception of Dalibor Dvorsky and the first round picks that year. But even then, like, that also meant losing our captain, Ryan O'Reilly, and Tarasenko, our franchise player, who, if we hadn't traded away, if we had been still competitive, I think O'Reilly would have gotten an extension, and he's right now one of Nashville's best players and one of the best players on the trade market. So there still would have been value for O'Reilly into the future. Anyways, I'm getting too far into the old season. This season has been disappointing for sure. Playoffs are pretty firmly out of the question for the Blues. But that being said, I think we're getting a lot of our questions answered in very, very positive ways that I think will really set us up well going into the future. I mean, we were just talking minutes ago pre-episode that I'm super, super excited for next season. I think if they push the right buttons, which they have shown they've been able to do, that the Blues are going to be a force to reckon with this coming season or off season. But regardless, certainly this season has not been what we all hoped for, and I think it's mostly silver linings. As a whole, it's been kind of a thumbs down.
For sure, and it's a bummer that we're already sort of talking about how excited we are for next season here in early February. To be honest, I didn't think it would happen so soon, but if you tune into our last episode, if you haven't already, you can go check that out. We are kind of out on this team making the playoffs this season. I finally gave up on my hopes that this team could put together some insane run. Really, to me, the story of the last third of the season, since you sort of took the more overarching view with your points there. Um, the last third has been, to me, really characterized by a Blues team that showed the ability to get in the race and get with it, put together a run. They were hot at one point. I was feeling so good about this team. And then over the last 10 games, they have, had a much rougher time. So they won those back-to-back games against Calgary, and that was the closest they have come to sniffing the playoffs since they won the first game of the season and were the President's Trophy favorites way back then, since they were the first team to actually win a game. Anyways, um, they in their last 10 games, so starting with that Utah game, after the back-to-back against Calgary, they have lost 7 of those 10, and it's been very tough to watch this slide. That came against a lot of good teams. It was a tough 10 games playing teams like Vegas, Dallas, Vancouver, and Colorado. I mean, we just saw them play the Oilers and the Panthers as well. A lot of playoff teams, a lot of Stanley Cup contenders in that group as well, and it was just difficult to watch them struggle. Although they did play pretty well recently against the Oilers and the Panthers, as we were sort of chatting pre-show about. They could have, you know, they could have won those games. It was looking like it was a possibility, and obviously the difference between the Blues and the Oilers and the Panthers, I mean, it's a big difference. They're not that well built. They are not a true Stanley Cup contender right now. So I mean, that's not what we're saying here, but they showed fight in those games, and that's what you want to see from a team that's in the playoff race. We didn't see it. We haven't seen it, for a long enough period from this Blues team. They still have yet to win 3 games in a row, even, and so that to me has sort of been the biggest story, is showing real determination, real talent to get back in the wild card race, and then just sort of losing it and slipping back out of it, and that's sucks that that's where we're at this point. But like you said, I am also pretty excited looking forward. Anything else you want to touch on generally before we start to get into some tiers talk?
Just once again, I think Armstrong and co have sort of proved their mettle to
Yep.
a degree that I personally am very satisfied with,
Mhm.
and am excited going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Awesome. Well, we can go ahead and get into it here. So if anyone has not seen like a sort of a tiers system, we'll be going in alphabetical order here, just going through Blues players and a couple personnel members, Army and Monty. We'll see if Alec can keep them straight this time. But
doubt.
basically, we're going to be assigning grades to all of these people, all these players and personnel. And a tier system is sort of meant to, does what it sounds like. Put these people into tiers, and rather than like a full on ranking, it's just sort of what level is this player playing at relative to his teammates, and how are they performing, generally speaking, compared with their teammates. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Let's see if I can share my screen here. So do you want to start with Bennington, or do you want to just go full alphabetical order here? Or do you want to end with Army and Monty?
Let's end with let's start with players.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, sort of moving alphabetically down the list, we're starting with Jordan Bennington. He's had a rough season after a sort of like crazy generational comeback season or sort of one of the better seasons in his career last year. Could have been a Vezina finalist and should have been, in my opinion. But this season has been tougher for him. In last tiers episode, we put him in B. I think we sort of assumed or maybe hoped that he would sort of get back into it. or sort of get back to form, I guess I should say, but he hasn't quite done that. So for these tiers, by the way, Alec and I will have to reach a consensus. We're not going to have these players be in separate tiers for each of us. So we'll have to find some point that we agree on. Alec, where are you leaning for Bennington? Because I'm thinking like C, honestly.
This is a tough one to start off with. I am kind of leaning B, but I think I'm okay with C. The reason I say that, I think his season stats are, and this admittedly is a very tough thing to say, just like to kind of write. I don't mean to entirely write things off, but
Mm-hmm.
this hear me out on my reasoning. I think he's had a lot of bad breaks this year. I mean, even looking last night in Chicago, two of those goals that were counted against him were just sort of random deflections in off of legs and or Ryan Suter.
Yeah.
And we've seen other instances of that with Binnington in other games where he just seems to never really catch a break. And I mean, I feel bad for the guy for it. Um, I mean, looking at his game log, before last night, it was 3 goals allowed, 1 goal allowed, 3 goal allowed, 2, 4, 4, 1, 2, 5, shutout, 2, 4. So really all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
If you say 4 goals, a losing effort, 3 is kind of neutral. Yeah, I think we can do C. I think I tried to make myself feel better about it, and I think it's just missing the point. So
Yeah, and I think he is kind of top of C ish. Like considering the rest of like the rest of the league and how goaltending is looking across the league, most of it is down. Like save percentage is at its lowest across the league that it's been in a while. I still think he's below average. I don't have the numbers in front of me as far as like what his save percentage is right now. Let's see.
it's
Actually, I do. It's
896.
896. So
898.
still sub 900, which isn't great. So I think C is sort of where he belongs, but we can see how he measures up with some of these other guys as we go on. One note on Binnington: now that the Blues are into this break here in February, Binnington will get some looks in net for Team Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off. We'll provide some coverage for that here on Note News as that comes. I believe the first game is next Wednesday on February 12th, so we'll be keeping an eye on Binnington. Hopefully, like behind an elite team, he'll look a lot better. I think it's natural to assume that he will. So hopefully he'll get some confidence back and come back to the Blues looking good. But I think this is sort of where he belongs. If you're tuning in live, let us know what you think of our rankings, or if you have any ideas as to where maybe these players should go. But let's go ahead and move this right along. Zach Bolduc. I think he is criminally underrated by nobody but the Blues. Like
Yes,
the
absolutely.
coaching staff. It's Blues fans know how good he is. We've talked about how good he looks, how much he deserves more playing time. But it seems like they just don't want to play him. Now, one positive thing is that Zach Bolduc was assigned to Springfield today, and so Sam in the chat was asking, why did they send Zach Bolduc to Springfield? He's been playing so good. Alec and I both, our first reaction was, what? Like, why are they doing this? What are they thinking here? But you got to remember, they are going into a break now. Their next game is on February 22nd, so we've got just under 2 weeks until the Blues play their next NHL game. And I think they just want Zach Bolduc to stay in his routine, stay in his rhythm, and play with a solid Springfield team. It's not like he's going to be playing alongside a bunch of chumps. Dvorsky's looking good. Stenberg's looking good. Springfield is kind of loaded now. But the reason they sent down...
They're a really good team.
Yeah. The reason they sent down Bolduc was just to give him some more playing time. He'll get to play a few games and just keep it going and tear it up in Springfield and hopefully come back looking even better than he has already. But where do you want to put Bolduc? He's an interesting one. Last time we had him in the C tier. I think he has worked his way up that for sure. I'll let you take it first on this one.
Well, the only point against that, I would say, is right now he is tied for points with Cam Fowler. He is 1 point under Justin Falk. And
Mm-hmm.
even Jake Neighbors, who's been getting more of a run time on the first line, has 7 more points than him, admittedly in 10 more games. So maybe that isn't really a argument. But the point is that he's only got 6 goals on the season, 18 points in 46 games. He definitely has cooled off production-wise. Now, is that a fault of line stuff? I mean, you could argue, but I would say yes, it is, and it isn't really his fault. But also, in terms of impact on the team,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. But I do love Zach Bolduc. He is very, very good defensively, which I did not expect at all, to be
I was gonna
honest.
say, yeah.
I never thought that would be part of his game, which is cool that he can be sort of a specialist in that way.
Right.
But still, I don't know. I want to put him in B, but
I
has he
was
been significantly better for the team than Jordan Binnington? What do you think?
I think comparing him to a goalie is tough, just because obviously Bennington is going to be more valuable. But I think relative to Bolduc's expectations, he's looked really good. I think looking at his rate stats, like we did on that one episode recently, where we talked about some of the young guys, he looks a lot more impressive. He's just not getting the playing time as much as some of these other guys, and I think if he did, then those counting stats would look better. Um, your point stands that he you know in terms of, or your point is well made, that his production doesn't really like stand out offensively, but he does look good defensively. That being said, he's got a great shot. He's looked really skilled, um, and he's really growing and developing sort of like in front of our eyes this season. Um, there was a part of me that wanted to put him as high as A. I'm realizing that was probably a little too high on him, but I think B is honestly where he belongs. We put him in bottom of C last time. I think he's worked his way up to at least like bottom of B. I think,
Yeah, it would have to be bottom of B
yeah,
if anything.
sure. I think especially considering his preseason expectations, if we're grading on a curve here, he has looked really good, I think. Um, what do you think? We wanna put him in B for now?
We can put him in B for now.
Sweet. All right, moving on to our Swedish prince, Philip Broberg. We had him in S tier last time and felt pretty comfortable about that. He had a good night last night. He had a goal and 1 assist, I think. He that was a clean goal. Did you see that goal? He just let it
Oh
rip
yeah.
from deep. That was pretty sweet. And we had him in S tier last time, which is best of the best. And I mean that was in large part because of his early season like heater that he was on for those first 12 games or whatever, 6 games. I can't remember exactly, but he looked fantastic early season, and that was a big part of it. He has cooled off a lot since coming back from injury,
Yeah.
so I don't know if S tier is really where he belongs anymore. But that being said, he still is performing like one of the Blues' best players. I think he's still a top 5 player overall for the Blues. Honestly,
Mhm.
I expected most of his value to come from his offense. If I'm being honest, like preseason, I mean, I expected him as a he profiles as a great skater. He can pass, but he really moves the puck very well. To I expected most of his positive contribution to come from the offense, but it's been his defense that has really impressed me. He defends really well. He defends really smart, which I really like, especially from a young player. Seeing that sort of cerebral level to his game. Um, I have loved Philip Broberg, even though he's cooled off. I think he's still shown flashes. I think he's still having a solid season. Um, I think he is A tier for me, but I don't know what you think.
I'm also on A tier. I
Sweet.
think, yeah, I think top of A tier is fine too. I think, like you said, arguably a top five skater for the team. Definitely has cooled off production wise, and I mean
Hmm.
really cooled off.
For
Like
sure.
those 2 points last night were his first 2 points in like 3 weeks, and he has had what 5 or 6. No, sorry, in 2025 he's had 3 points. So definitely offensively, like still looks good, and I like the
Hmm.
future ceiling for him offensively. I actually think he is gonna end up being a really good two-way defenseman. Like I think his offense is really gonna come along, but definitely this season is not happening. But
Yeah.
yeah, defensively awesome, and they've been giving him more minutes too, sort of underratedly.
Hmm.
In that stretch where he was playing with Falk and just playing out of his mind before he got injured, he was averaging. Let's see, there's one the game he got taken out sort of skews things. So he was averaging 20 minutes a night, 20 almost 20 and a half minutes a night.
Hmm.
And then after that, his deployment lessened. But since then, since the new year, honestly,
Right.
he is back up to north of just under 20. So my apologies,
Yeah.
but still very close to where he had been.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think he's really proven himself to just be a very, very solid defender. An
Yeah.
excellent top four defenseman. Could totally play on a top pair. You just probably want to pair him with a Colton Parayko or a Noah Dobson or some other offensive threat from the blue line. Essentially, Marcus
Yeah.
Pedersen. Spoilers for my offseason list. But yeah, I
Yeah.
do think A for Broberg for sure is
Yeah.
where I would put him.
Yeah. Good that we agree on that one. Just moving right along, Pavel Buchnevich. This is a guy who's received a fair bit of criticism this season after netting himself a like 6 year, 6 by 8 million, I believe, contract extension in the offseason. Has not had a great year this year. I'll let you uh, take this one first. Do you think the criticism is fair? What do you think of Buchnevich, who in our last episode we gave him we put him in the B tier last season or last episode, sorry. So what do you think of Buchnevich?
It's definitely a demotion for me. I don't think I'm not going full D tier because I don't think I can say that he's been nothing but a liability for this
Yeah,
team. He still is fourth on the team in points. Like
right.
we talk about Buchnevich as having such a disappointing season. Defensively, he's been fine and he's still fourth on the team in points.
Hmm.
I can't say that he's been a D tier player. That
Right.
being said, I do think it's C tier and I think it's below Binnington also. But maybe that's just my defensive goalies, but yeah, it's not the season you wanted from him, and it looks like it's going to be probably a career low season for him. But
Hmm.
it doesn't look like he's lost a step or even like mentally. Um, it doesn't look like he's mentally struggling at like how to play the game. It's just like he is probably in his own head about not producing, and even like on I think it was I can't remember what game it was, but I think it was Thomas had a power play goal or like fired one in from the slot and Booch. I'm not gonna get it. It was one of our two most recent games. Someone was like in the slot, fired it at the net, and Buchnevich was right there. His stick was right there to deflect it in, and like someone just sort of like stuck their stick out just in front of his and poached it away. And like both were at the same angle, basically the same position. It's moments like that where he can't catch a break. He's still been playing really well, but I think perhaps an off season of coaching under Monty,
You did it. You got it.
plus everything else. I'm not throwing in the towel on Buchnevich's career, not by a long
No.
shot.
Yeah.
But I do think this season has been super disappointing. So I would go C tier.
I'm thinking C tier as well. Honestly, his offense, it hasn't been great. I will say, especially on an individual level, but it hasn't been bad. I think the criticism of his offense has been a little overblown. he's still assisting a lot. And as you said, isn't like falling out of it in terms of point production as far as like his ranking on the team. But more importantly, I think the team around him looks good when he's on the ice, especially at 5-on-5. The on ice offense for the Blues has looked pretty good. Where I am more concerned is his defense. He is, profiled as a sort of 200-foot forward, someone that we can really trust to be defensively responsible, and he hasn't really been that this season, which I think is part of the criticism and part of the struggle. Just as the team looks really good at 5-on-5 when he's on the ice on offense, they look pretty bad when he's on the ice on defense at 5-on-5. So it's been tough, and he's been playing some difficult minutes. I'll give him that. But I do think C is where he belongs. I don't think we need to overwork that one, and we can put him behind Bennington since you you are, I guess, so defensive of your goalies or whatever, Alec. But okay, well let's keep it moving. I do think the criticism of Buchnevich is a little overblown, and as you said, I'm not throwing in the towel on his career. I'm not giving up on him. I think he'll be okay.
Again, he's not even 30. It's not like Buchnevich is just cooked. Maybe worst case, I imagine, is that he's not the same player we used to remember, but he's still a productive forward. Like, he's fourth on the team in points.
Yeah, he'll be fine. The cap's going to go up. That $8 million, cap hit isn't going to look as bad. It's going to be fine.
I can't believe how much it's going up.
It's going up like crazy. We can get more on that on later episodes. That is super interesting. Okay, moving on to Radek Faksa, a forward who was acquired in the off season. He's a pending UFA, so could they look to trade him? Maybe. He probably wouldn't net a huge return necessarily, but he's looked okay. Honestly, I don't think he's looked quite as good as he did at the beginning of the season. He's a great defensive forward. He plays a lot of tough minutes for the Blues, and is sort of the centerpiece of that WTF line. That is like that identity line, right? We put him in the the C tier last time. I'm not too keen on moving him from there. Honestly, I think C is probably where I would keep Faksa. Honestly, I think an argument could be made for D tier for him, just because he's less of like an all-around contributor as some of the other players on the team. But I think I'd put him in C. I think his value comes from more than just his point production necessarily. I think it's the other things, the peripherals that are where his value really comes. But what do you think of Faksa?
Yeah, I am also. I think C is totally fair, and I mean Radek Faksa is like. This is like that, immaculate grid player, or like when you're chatting in 5 years, going back and forth about your favorite role players. Like Radek Faksa is on my list now after this season. He's been a fourth line center all season long. I think he should be our third. He's been like awesome in that role. Like again, in that role, like. I'm not gonna go to war for Radek Faksa here, but like he's just been so great defensively and pretty okay offensively. I don't know. I think for what you could have possibly expected, I've loved Radek Faksa. So yeah, it's the happiest C tier placing of my life.
Cool. Yeah, I think I feel pretty comfortable about that. Not a whole lot to add there. He just goes about his business. He's a solid player. That's sort of one adjective that we've used a lot this season. Real solid guy. Moving on to Justin Falk, defenseman Justin Falk. Can you make a case for him to not be in D tier?
Nope.
Yep, that's where we put him last time. I think that's where he stays. Not a whole lot of value coming from Falk. I think the hate is a little overblown, if we're being honest. And I think that stems in large part from his large contract and sort of that being one contract that Blues fans are eager to see like basically off the books and out of St. Louis. And I think that's fair. And I think that should be a priority for this Blues team. But I think the criticism of Falk has been a little overblown. That being said, I don't think he is, any higher than D tier. But I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, he definitely this guy. I mean, he gets talked about pretty like very angrily online, and he certainly hasn't helped the team win this season. But he isn't just this black hole of a hockey player that no one is going to ever accept and can never play in the NHL again. Like he still does some things okay. So I agree that it's overblown, but definitely a D tier player for the purposes of this ranking.
Yeah, agreed. All right, moving on to the next defenseman whose name starts with F, Cam Fowler. I'll let I'll let you start on this one, but he was obviously a mid-season addition. We did not have him on our list last time, so he is new to the tiers ranking. He's played a lot of top pair minutes alongside Colton Parayko. He's looked like he's rejuvenated this team at times and rejuvenated him. He himself looks rejuvenated as a player. But what do you think of Fowler and where he belongs?
So if Zach Bolduc is a B tier player, then Cam Fowler is a B tier player to me. I think he is, as I mentioned before, they're tied in points,
Hmm.
but for Fowler, it's coming as a defenseman, so that's
Hmm.
inherently very valuable. The slotting of Fowler into this team just made the defensive pairing question go away. Like there was no question of
Yeah.
how the team should line up on the blue line after his acquisition and after he showed what he could do essentially.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's been a perfect complement to Colton Parayko. I am so totally for Cam Fowler on this team and being on this team next year. And hey, I might even be thinking about an extension. Not a 8
4
by
year.
6.5.
Yeah.
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 But two, 3, maybe 3 to 5 million a year. Anyways, getting ahead of myself as I
Yeah.
always do. I'm putting Cam Fowler in the B tier, and I think
Yeah.
because he's a defenseman, I would put him over Bolduc. But I could hear it either way.
Yeah, I think top of B tier. I think an argument could even be made for A tier, if we're being honest, as maybe not.
Really?
And the reasoning for that is not because of his individual performance necessarily, but what he has done for the entire team. I think is really where his value comes.
Yeah.
As you sort of described there, he looks fantastic alongside Pareko. He makes Pareko look better, and he also just helps the rest of the defense slot in more so like where they belong. Broberg isn't really a top pair guy yet. I think he could get there. Falk doesn't look great on the top pair. Suter was getting a lot of those minutes, and he looked solid. But I don't think he's a top pair guy necessarily. And so I think what he's done for the rest of the team has been really great. He's looked great offensively, and I think I think B tier is probably where he belongs more realistically. But that's sort of an interesting one to me. But we can definitely above Bolduc. I think I would agree with you there, and maybe even towards the top of B for me. But we can slot him in there for now. Moving on to the next goalie, Joel Hofer. Hofer has also had sort of a rougher year, especially compared with his really solid year last year. He's got a 903 save percentage. He has won 10 games and lost 7 in 18 games. Um, what else? He's got a goals allowed average of 288. What do you make of Hofer? I think um, I don't know that I would put him above Bennington. I don't think he has been more valuable than Bennington. I think C tier is where he belongs to me. Maybe above Faxa, below Buchnevich is sort of where I'm thinking for Hofer. But what are your thoughts on the other goalie?
Interesting. You say you wouldn't put him above Bennington.
I don't know. I think a case could be made that he has looked like the better goalie at times, but he's also not playing as much as Bennington. So I don't know. I think I could be convinced that he would be above Bennington, but I'm eager to hear what you think.
Well, I think I probably would put him above Bennington. I think part of the reason for that, it definitely like totally he hasn't been getting the lion's share. This is still Bennington's pipes, if you will.
Yeah.
But that being said, I still think he is sort of out. I mean, not sort of. He has outperformed Bennington. You know, better goals against, better save percentage at 903 and 288 for Hofer. A big one for me, which is really tough because I don't know how to properly use the stat, and especially you and I are both baseball guys. In baseball, it's the dumbest thing ever. But I mean, his record is 10-7-1. Bennington's record is I just lost it. Is really bad. Hofer is at the very least by record, which again does not encompass all that goalies are,
Yeah.
especially wins. But I think losses are kind of applicable here. Bennington is 15, 19, and 4. So
Yeah.
15 wins, 19 losses, versus Hofer's 10 and 7. So Bennington has lost us more games than, and not, I don't just mean like raw numbers, because obviously he'll lose us more games when he plays more. But he's been more of a factor. The other part of this too that I would put Hofer over Bennington is there hasn't been as much of that inconsistency with Hofer. He has had two sort of blow up games against Columbus and against Colorado, where he allowed 5 goals, and I guess one way back at the beginning of the season. But you know, in this, I mean, we are looking at the whole season. So he's had 3 like blow up games, 3 games with 4 goals allowed, and then the rest is 3 or under. Whereas Bennington is sort of that like 5-2-0-3-4-3-4-4. There's a lot more
Yeah.
4 on his page
Yeah.
that I think Hofer kind of does give us a better chance to win. And wow, 4 straight losses for Hofer is a really tough look.
Yeah.
But in those losses, allowed 3 goals twice, 1 goal twice, and 5 goals one time. So definitely one of those you could put on Hofer.
Yeah.
But you know, going 0-3 when you allow 3 goals, 3 goals, 1 goal, is that his record could be even better. And again, record is not necessarily a good stat, but I think it embodies why I, for the time being, I kind of trust Hofer in net more than Bennington. I think he's just been more consistent.
Yeah.
Long term, Bennington's still the guy. This team loves Bennington. He sells so much merch. Like, I'm not saying that they need to move on from Bennington and give Hofer the keys, but I think in terms of just grading for this season, I do think Hofer is above Bennington.
Okay. I'm comfortable putting him there for sure, but I think it could go either way. Honestly, I think they're really comparable. One stat sort of, I guess, to go against Hofer. Not that I want to do that necessarily, but goal saved above expected is one of the better
Yeah, that's
goalie
true.
metrics out there, and he doesn't look great.
His is bad. Yeah.
He's got negative 7.2 right now in 20 games played, and I think that is, I mean, bad. But like you said, a lot of his other metrics look good, and if the team can put together, some offense around him, he looks good, and I'm comfortable putting him above Bennington, but I think C tier still is sort of where he belongs for sure.
I'll compromise. I'll agree with you there.
Cool, sounds good. Moving on to Dylan Holloway. Do we have our first S tier guy?
Ooh.
Take it away, Alec. What do you think of Holloway?
Um, I only thought there were going to be 2 S tiers. I think there's 3. I mean, maybe 4, but in terms of skaters. But yeah, I think S tier for Holloway. Been playing on that elite Holloway Shin Kairu line, and a big part of that. Whoa.
I guess there's like a jet going over.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure
Sorry,
if it was
everyone.
like thunder or something. Yeah, I think S tier. Been playing on that elite Holloway Shen Kairu line. Definitely been just such a huge driver of offense and defense there. Always gets the nod in overtime and playing pretty well on special teams. Defensively is maybe our best defensive forward. And I was at first like maybe going to push back on Holloway a little bit, but I mean, 40 points in 56 games as one of the youngest skaters on the team is nuts. Like the
Yeah.
sky is the limit for this kid. He's going to be a top 6 forward for 5 years at least, and is going to be awesome. And he is awesome. So S for sure.
Yeah, he's absolutely been the best defensive forward, which, again, I thought more of his value would come from offense preseason, same as Broberg. He looks so good, and he looks great offensively too. He looks really balanced, I think. It's not like one or the other is really the bulk of his value. It is that he is looking fantastic both ways. So I think S tier is definitely where he belongs. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite Blues. I love Dylan Holloway, and I think S tier for sure. He is, um, dude. Honestly, and it's crazy. I might be wrong, but has he been better than Robert Thomas? I don't know.
Okay, so you know how I said that I think there have been 4 S tier skaters? Let's save it for the Robert Thomas
Okay,
discussion,
all
but
right.
I we'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Matthew Joseph. He's the next guy on the list. Not super, not a big contributor for the Blues necessarily. He's pretty middling, honestly. He's looked decent defensively, not much to write home about offensively though. Um, I think let's see. Oh, by the way, last time Holloway we put in A tier, and so I think he's definitely earned a promotion in that way. But Matthew Joseph we put in D tier last time. Do you think he still belongs in D tier? I think a case could be made for him to be elevated to the C tier. But what do you think about Matthew Joseph?
Well, I think you should make that case to me then.
Wow, calling me out, huh? I think I think he's been underutilized. When I think about Matthew Joseph, I think his value comes more from his on ice stats, as in how the team looks around him. As an individual, he's one of those guys who doesn't look good. He's got 7 points between 3 goals and 4 assists. So his individual ratings aren't great, and I know that for an episode like this, those are pretty important. Um, I don't think he is playing like a $3 million player, which is what he's being paid. Um, but around him, I think the team looks decent, especially defensively. Um, he's looked he's looked pretty good defensively or he has helped the Blues look pretty good defensively at 5-on-5. I don't know, man. That's sort of the case. Is he's one of those guys who to me is more. It's more about how the team looks around him than how he looks as an individual, which is a little bit harder to measure. I know, but um, maybe it's a little bit eye test. I don't know.
I hear you.
He's someone who since our last episode doing this, especially in the month of January, I think has looked better than he did for like the first third. But yeah, why do you hate Matthew Joseph?
I hear you. And I definitely think defensively he has been pretty all right in his bottom 6 role pretty much exclusively. Offensively, there are times this year where I've thought he's actually looked pretty good process wise, but just hasn't been able to score. I think just lack of sort of talent, to be honest.
Yeah,
And honestly, I think it's mostly just that. It's that he's not really burying pucks. He's not really offering much. I mean, why I push back on Matthew Joseph is because he got 7 points in 37 games.
yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Oscar Sundquist has 10 points, but which isn't great either, and also 28 penalties and minutes. But um, I don't know. I think as a defensive winger who doesn't offer much else, it's one thing to be a defensive center that can like win faceoffs and maybe play special teams role. Joseph kind of has arguably one tool for this team, and it's not a great tool, I think,
Yeah,
especially in his role. If I'm being honest, if I would rather have two defensively meh but offensively scary bottom six lines or two defensively incredible but offensively scary or offensively terrible bottom six lines, I would rather take the depth scoring than the depth defense.
Yeah.
So I would put him like top of D, but I could settle for bottom of C. If you feel it's unearned, I think that's fine. Because I think it sort of depends too how I'm going to view guys like or how we talk about like Texier, Torbo, Sunquist.
Yeah.
That maybe because I kind of view them all in sort of a bunch, and I'm curious as to where they'll end up sliding here. So
Yeah, I think you make some good points there. I think D tier is probably where he belongs. He was sort of middle, or I guess bottom to middle of D tier last time. I think maybe he's like upper D tier now, but yeah,
sure.
I think you're probably right. Sort of keeping me honest here. Let's move on to Matthew Kessel. Not a lot here for Kessel. We had him in D tier as well, towards the bottom. I think that's probably where he stays. He's looked decent in Springfield for sure this season, but what do you think?
Very much a quad A year for Matthew Kessel, and I still think he could play a role on this team into the future. But unfortunately, this season just has not done that.
Yeah, I
Still
agree.
excited about him for the future, as a bottom pair defenseman though.
Yeah, hope he can figure it out on the NHL level team, because I would love for them to find another solid young defenseman for the future. Moving it right along, Jordan Kyrou, S tier, right?
Where else but top of S tier?
Top of S tier. Yeah,
I think he's been the
agree.
best skater. I think he's been the most impactful piece of the St. Louis Blues in 2024-25.
Yeah, I think you're right about that for sure.
I mean, he's finally arrived. We've been talking for so long about if he puts it all together, He's been doing it for now 2/3 of a season and like making it look easy, going to be right around 70, 80 points with really good defense, great special teams play, and only getting better. So
yeah,
just awesome.
Yeah, he's looked so good, and has looked great defensively, which is, as you're saying, if he can put it all together, and he's been the best player for the Blues. I agree with you there, and has been great all around. Really developing his defensive game, his play away from the puck.
I never thought, like, that's the biggest surprise about this.
Yeah.
We all knew he offensively has the talent to be, this caliber player. This defensive just being incredible, at least to me, like, came out of nowhere. Like, I thought Jordan Kyrou was just going to be Jake Gensel, but no, this is serious ability.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's a lot of litigating to do here. I think pretty comfortably in S tier is where Kyrou belongs.
I think Kyrou stands atop the mountain, looking down on everyone else.
That's right. Okay, moving on to Nick Leddy, D tier, right? Bottom of D tier.
I mean, he hasn't really played. He's been like kind of a non-factor since he came back, which is a plus in this case because he was a straight negative.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really going to be that hung up on the placement of our D tier rankings, wherever you feel, I guess. But
we didn't rank him last time. I think bottom of D, it doesn't really matter where these guys are. You want to hear something kind of crazy though? So there's a writer over at The Athletic. His name is Dom Luszczyszyn, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He has a fancy model that just evaluates NHL players, and he's got a metric called net rating. It looks at offense and defense. Do you want to guess Nick Leddy's net rating this season? It's insane.
Is it below 20? Negative 20?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's minus 26.
I've never seen one even get to 20 plus or minus.
Minus 26 net rating in 7 games. And okay, I think it's crazy.
I mean, not any one stat can be taken as gospel, but good Lord.
And yeah, it's crazy. I think lower D tier is where where he belongs. I don't think there's a lot of discussion to be had. Hopefully he can work his way up. I'll say that. Hopefully he can look better than he looked early season, but we can move it right along to our next forward, which is Jake Neighbors, who we put in A tier last time. Where do you want to put your boy Jakey Neighbors on this one?
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Can we keep him out of C tier? He is got 13 goals, which is fourth on the team, tied with Thomas. Holloway's got 16.
I think he could be. I think he could be B tier. Like, and that's not just like my blue, like blue colored glasses, I guess. He hasn't been as good as last year. He hasn't, you know, been as good as he was at the beginning of the season either. But he's still seventh on the team in points. He's got 25. He is tied for third on the team in goals at 13. He's top 10 in assists. He's at ninth in assists with 12. He isn't great. I won't say that. But I think he's better than Hofer, Bennington, Faxa. Like,
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And I think, like, because we definitely, obviously this offseason, all of us were so high on Jake Neighbors and, myself at perhaps the front of that charge. And I still like his future as a Blue. I think a big part of that we said was that the way that this team is going to succeed is through depth scoring, is hitting that 20 goal plateau. And he's got 13, 2/3 of the way through the season. Like, he's going to finish right around there. And so if he's about on pace for 20 goals, which is realistic, we knew he wasn't probably not going to get 27 again.
Yeah.
But still scoring over 20 goals as like a 23-year-old, I want to 22-year-old, excuse me, about to be 23 later this season. But he's still 22. And he's like on pace to finish around what we wanted for him. I think bottom of B tier is okay.
Bottom of B. Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Bottom of B. I think a case could be made for C tier, but I think
absolutely.
Yeah, I think B tier. Okay, Colton Parayko, is he the next S tier guy? Is this one of the guys you were talking about? Yeah, that's what
Colton
I'm talking
Parayko is S tier. He is offensively back. He's got 12 goals already, which is even like among NHL defensemen is really impressive. And scoring a lot of points, not allowing a lot of goals. 8 penalty minutes on the air. I mean, he's just so back, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's crazy playing with Cam Fowler of all things is what got him there. But I'm not going to complain. I mean, he's sixth on the team in points for a team that is like defensively had nothing from the blue line since Pietrangelo left. So I'm S tier for Parayko all the way.
On track for
I would say even
year.
Above Holloway, but
above Holloway. Yeah, I think he, at least considering his team value, I think he could be.
I think Kyrou, as our number one defenseman, sorry to interrupt, I think Kyrou and Parayko are 1 and 2 in terms of best skaters this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Career year, he's on track for a career year in goals, assists, points, like all of it. I believe his current pace is 18 goals. I mean, his highest in his career so far came last, he's already at his highest in his career. But he has 12 right now. He's hit 10 goals 3 times. But he's on track for 18. He's on track for 43 points right now. He looks fantastic. Another guy who'll be playing for Team Canada in the Four Nations face-off here soon. And I mean, for all the criticism surrounding that pick, you're not getting like a better Parayko in his entire career so far than you're getting right now. So like, I think the criticism of that pick for Four Nations is unfair. I think he's gonna look really good alongside some other great Canadian defensemen. But I think S tier, baby, that's where he belongs. Moving on to Braden Shen, also kind of having a late career year. In terms of his recent seasons, it's looked like a resurgence for him. By the way, Parayko, last time we put him in A tier. Shen we put in C tier last time. So do you think Shen has worked his way up to B?
I absolutely do. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. He's been a huge reason why the Blues have been even competitive at all. Like you said, a sort of late career resurgence. Not necessarily like he's all the way back like Pareko, but
yeah,
he's one of this team's best forwards. I mean, he's fifth in points right now, only two behind Buchnevich, and definitely like he's just a good 2C. You know, maybe not the best 2C in the league or anything, but
yeah.
a plus for this team and would be a plus on any team. And yeah, I like him right there at top of B, I think.
Top of B. I think I agree. Looking at some of the other guys in that tier as well. Yeah, he looks great. Really, for and his value. He's one whose value also comes from off the ice, right? Like what he does for this team's identity is huge. He's a great leader for the team. Um, I think
He's
a lot of
been
people,
throwing some hits and some fists around this
for
year,
sure.
which he
Yeah,
always does. But man, it
yeah,
just gets me so fired up wearing the C and doing that.
yeah. He's like Sam Bennett light, low key. Like I feel like he he's really underrated as a player and as like a leader for this team. I know a lot of people roll their eyes when we talk about like veteran leadership and stuff in St. Louis, but yeah, I think Braden Shen looks great, and I think top of B is great. Uh, Moving along to Oscar Sundquist, we had him dead last time at bottom of D tier. I mean, still there?
Still D tier.
Do you think he's above
Um,
Letty? Maybe right here.
yeah, probably right around there. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. Not a lot to talk about with Sunquist, but he's been a net negative for sure. Um,
unfortunately.
Unfortunately, um, I think his. I will say, like in his favor or in his in support of Sunquist, the team looks decent defensively around him, but still like a huge net negative. I don't think there's much to add on that point. Ryan Suter is our next guy, someone who has been more valuable to the Blues and has played a lot better than we expected preseason. We had him in top of C tier at the beginning or at the in the previous tier ranking. What do you think of Ryan Suter? Do you think he's still C tier? Do you think he's B tier? Where do you have him?
Um, that's tough because he has been really good in his role, but his role is like a bottom pair defenseman. I'm looking at our list now.
If we had him top of C last time, I think he's gotten worse since then. So I don't. I think C tier is where I'd keep him. Um, Maybe below Buchnevich. I'm not sure. What do you think of Suter?
Um, yeah, I think that's okay. I think you've swayed me.
Okay, right here. Wait, did I say below or above?
You said below Buchnevich, and I think Buchnevich again for all the negatives we've been talking about is still
Yeah,
yeah
yeah, I agree.
like scoring points.
Yes, he's still valuable in some way. Okay, next guy is Alexandre Texier, someone who we hope will get more playing time with Brandon Saad moving off the roster, and hope that those increased minutes will lead to like an increase in or improvement in production. He is we put him in D tier last time. Um, he's someone that I like really want to be able to elevate, but I'm not so sure that we can. I think D tier is still where he's at.
I agree. I also would like it if it weren't but
Do you think above
um,
Sonny, below Joseph?
sure.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll have more to talk about next time we do these rankings. But yeah, I'm not so sure there's much for um, to talk about for Texier. Okay, moving
Okay.
on to I want to hear your Robert Thomas take. Is he not S tier for you? We put him in S tier last time, and that was in December when he was looking like Robert Thomas, playing like Robert Thomas when he plays like Robert Thomas. Um, yeah, what do you think?
It's so difficult, and I could definitely hear S and A tier. I think I'm kind of leaning A tier though, if I'm being honest. Points
Ooh.
wise, miraculously, he is still Robert Thomas, 41 points in 44 games. So, he's on a point per game basis, but I do think a lot of that has come either recently or this is such an annoying sports fan thing to say, but in moments when it hasn't mattered. Right now, Thomas is on a 4 game point streak, 5 points in 4 games. So that's definitely really helping him here. I think before that, I definitely would have said A tier.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's just calm down here. All right. Robert Thomas is at 41 points. He's only 3 points behind Jordan Kyrou in 12 fewer games. All right. If Robert Thomas didn't get injured, he would be this team's leader in points.
Oh, no doubt.
I'd okay, compared with like the Robert Thomas of last season, the like emergent, all-star Robert Thomas that we saw, he hasn't been that, but he was like no doubt S tier. He was like top of S tier. Like you make a Robert Thomas tier above S tier last season. And he hasn't
Oh,
been
yeah.
that, but I think he is still an S tier player for the Blues this season. He is. I think a case can be made that he is. I'll say this. I think by the season's end, we could see him. We could see a case for him being like the team's MVP. I think it's still comfortably Jordan Kyrou right now. His offense has looked good. His defense not as good, but he's still Robert Thomas. You really think he's A tier?
So here's, I think a lot of what Robert Thomas brings to this team is that he is not only the best player of all time, you know, um, is that he is not only like being such a good offensive presence, it's that he's elevating the players around him that makes him such a valuable asset to this team. And I think this season, even coming out of this slump now, hopefully, um, that he's offensive and just production ability is still there, and he is shown been able to drag himself out of this hole. But I don't really think you can say he's been elevating the players around him this season. I mean, he's been playing on guys online with guys like Neighbors a lot, Buchnevich and Texier. And I mean, look where they're placed in this tier list. And now that isn't like you can't judge one player only by who they play with and who plays around them because that's ridiculous. But I really do think that there is some element to he isn't being as much of a leader on the ice. Off the ice, who knows? And he's probably, the greatest player of all time, like I've been saying. But I just think in terms of expectations and like impact on this team, and also, like you said, defensively, he has really not been great, to be honest. Had some bad penalty moments too, and also has been kind of poor on special teams. He's been demoted to the second power play unit, and on the first penalty kill, the PK hasn't been great. And I think part of that is also Thomas's defense and Buchnevich too is just not quite as stalwart as it used to be. So I don't know. I think in terms of expectations for who Robert Thomas is, I would put him in A. But maybe that's also because looking forward it might only be Broberg and 18. No, but seriously, I mean, I don't know. I'm still listening to S tier though because obviously he's Robert Thomas. So what's your response?
I don't know that I have much of a response. I think the special teams point is like the I think the special teams point is the biggest sort of thing you said that's swaying me a little. I think the point of we haven't seen him elevating the players around him as much. I mean, those players that we saw him elevating last year, the ones we saw him playing alongside a lot last year, were I mean they're having down seasons like Neighbors and Buchnevich, as you said. They don't look as good as they did last season. and I don't see how that is like a huge negative in Robert Thomas's column. I mean, Texier hasn't looked good really alongside anyone, if we're being honest, and a lot of these younger guys that have played alongside Thomas at times, or I mean like Neighbors and Texier and guys like that, um, haven't looked fantastic with anyone as their center. Like honestly, um, and like Thomas Buchnevich is a duo that we've come to know and love as a really solid duo. Robert Thomas can't do everything alone. I don't know.
Let me So he's still Robert Thomas. Let me just put into perspective how much of a down year this is for him, though. And again, he's still Robert Thomas, 41 points in 44 games, 13 goals already, is going to approach, probably not surpass, but approach his career high in goals, which is 26.
Yeah.
But since the bubble and weird COVID season, I'm just going to go in order. So 2021, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, and then this season in order, some stats. Giveaways 50, 40, 54, 64 in half a season's worth of games. Takeaways 60, 67, 70, 13. Blocks 25, 29, 47, 34. That's not awful. And then shooting percentage 17.4, 17, 15.3, 12.5 this season. So he's having a down year. He's still not totally playing like himself. But I mean, if you just want to say like he's second on the team in points and is going to end up being this team's points leader in like 60 games, I really can't argue that point. And so I think I'm going to leave the final decision up to you.
All right.
I'm really fine. I'm really fine S tier, A tier, either way. I think
we can put him top of A. All right. But he's top of A. All right.
I mean, we can make a Robert Thomas tier and have it just be sort of Schrodinger's tier of above S, but also in A.
Yeah. And I think one thing we're doing here is how do we, like another factor in this conversation is what were our expectations for this player. And I think you're right in that regard is he's not the Robert Thomas that we're used to. And so I'm tired of saying Robert Thomas. So let's
by the way, if you here. Blues fan watching this in the off season are skipping to this part in the video and being like, how could they put Robert Thomas in A? He had 100 points this season. This is our reasoning why you in the future.
Yes. Yeah. When Robert Thomas goes on a heater,
because of course he will.
Of course he will. He's like, as soon as he gets back from the break, he's gonna get like a last minute invite to Four Nations and like tear it up and then come back and look like a heart candidate. Anyways, moving on to Alexei Toropchenko, who, drumroll please, is up to 9 points this season.
Yes, that's a 900% increase.
The Torpo point tracker, 9 points this season. We had him sort of top of D tier in the last one. I think mid to bottom D tier is where I'd have him. He might be the worst player on the team. I don't know. I think that's a little harsh, but I think D tier. Maybe actually, I don't know. Where do you think he belongs? I want to hear your thoughts.
The thing with Torpo is he's just played so many games and done like nothing. He's been defensively okay, kind of likes to hit, but yeah, D tier. Like
I could see I'm looking at
Sunquist, Letty.
Yeah, I could see a case being made for anywhere within D tier. Honestly, like if we have Joseph upper D tier, like Toropchenko, hasn't been that much worse. I think,
but he's also played almost 20 more games and scored 2 more points than Joseph. So I do think Joseph should be above Toropchenko.
Should be above Toropchenko?
Yeah, I mean he's got.
Okay, yeah,
he's only 2 points away from tying him, and yeah.
I see what you're saying. I think maybe below Sonny.
Okay.
All right. Go to your home. Okay.
This is a fun one.
Yeah, it is. Okay, another interesting cat here, Tyler Tucker.
Only 19 games.
who has carved himself out a role on this team. I will say he's looked like a really solid third pair defenseman. He's been mixing it up, getting scrappy with it. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists in 19 games, but he's looked pretty good in his recent games. I think, I don't know, like C tier probably for Tucker, but what do you think?
I kind of wanted to put him in D tier, but I think C tier is probably right. He's only played 19 games, and he's been great in the role that they've been playing him since they
Yeah,
switched him and Kessel out. Like, he's been playing awesome. He
yeah,
does also have 30 penalties in minutes in 19 games,
yeah,
which for a defenseman is absurdly bad. Now, a lot of that's totally skewed from fights, like 5-minute majors
yeah,
for
yeah,
fighting.
yeah.
Totally skewed. So I think mostly, I like vibes wise, I think he's been B, but on it, you do have to
Maybe,
prove it for an extended
yeah,
run. So
yeah.
I think C is probably right.
Probably
But
bottom of C.
I would put him above Suter, I think.
Really? Okay. Maybe
I don't know. I don't
maybe
know. I'm
right
not really
here.
that.
Compromise.
Yeah, sure.
All right. We did it. Okay. Last player before we move on to some other guys. Nathan Walker.
My
Um,
goat.
Alex Short, uh, Australian King. The Thunder from Down Under. Um,
That's
on our
fine.
last tiers list, we had him towards the bottom of C. Um, at this point in the season, he's got 6 goals and 4 assists for 10 points. Um, I think, mm, I don't know, bottom of C is probably about right, about where I'd put him. He's not getting a lot of time, like a lot of minutes. He's really
Walker's in
a
beauty tier. That's right,
beauty
Matt.
tier. Yeah. He is. Oh, it's funny. I got me. He's like really a role player for this team, but he's an
He plays his
enforcer.
role.
He is tough. He's scrappy. Um,
Put my goat in C tier where he belongs. And like Fax said, this is like I couldn't be happier about it. Like,
okay, yeah, I'll
he's
put
just
him.
so I love
I'll put him
Nathan
here.
Walker.
Yeah,
Well, where does him and Faxa rank on point? They're tied for points. And I mean, he's got more goals, which again, I think scoring is more important than just points as a whole.
do you think?
Um,
I mean, do you think Fax's role as the center though, like his face-off percentage is good? I don't know. I feel like Faxa is just a more valuable player to me.
all right,
Um,
whatever. But
this is
shout out Nathan Walker.
shout
That's
out
all I want
Nathan
to
Walker.
say.
Yeah, shout out Nathan Walker. Cool. Well, that concludes our players. Let's talk about some personnel here. We can start with Monty, head coach Jim Montgomery, who took over in late November after Drew Bannister was fired and after Montgomery was fired by the Boston Bruins. In his games so far this season, he has a 16, 14, and 4 record. So he has gotten 36 points for the Blues of their, what did I say, 55 points. Last time we had him in A tier. Um, I think I personally would keep him there, like bottom of A. I think a case could be made for B tier. Um, and I say A tier because this is like one of the biggest things to me, is that Jim Montgomery has been obviously, when he first took over, they got the new head coach bump. They looked really good. They still haven't been able to put a 3-game win streak together, but they, for a time, looked really good. He got this team back in it. They have since slid back out of it. But what I really love about Jim Montgomery is that it seems like he has the future in mind when he's, making decisions for this team. He is not like so reactive to the point that he is uprooting the lineup every night. He doesn't seem like a coach who is out of answers to me. He just seems like the coach of a team, you know, that is at the Blues level, which is, you know, mid tier. Like when you look across the NHL, they are not an elite team. With the roster he's been given, I think he's done a pretty great job. I could see a case being made for him, like I said, to be maybe lower in B tier, but um, I really like that he has the future in mind with a lot of these moves. Obviously, his job is to win, and I don't doubt that that's what he wants to do. I don't doubt that he wants to make the playoffs. But I mean, he's not like sacrificing, you know, a player's development, for example, to get what he wants or anything like that. But I'm curious to hear your take on Monty. Like last time, it felt comfortably in A. Like it wasn't much of a discussion there. I think he's cooled off a little, but I don't know if he, you know, has cooled off enough to be B tier. But what do you think?
Well, actually, I was thinking at the beginning of this list that I might make a case for Montgomery to still be an S tier because to have this team still fighting and fighting so hard despite getting like punched in the mouth again and again with these close losses, these tough games, that they're still for the most part bought into like the season and trying to win.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do think not being able to put a 3-game win streak together. Our penalty kill right now is third worst in the league, which was supposed to be his specialty. The power
Yeah.
play is 10th worst, which isn't as bad, but not good.
Yeah.
That I think he should be A. I don't think I think still the talent on this team is like so close. And I don't think it would be right to me to have him in B tier for sure. The other
Yeah.
thing too is if you look at okay. Shout out for those of you on Twitter X and know JFresh put out a thing about like goal differentials throughout the year and put out one specifically about the Blues. I doubt I'll be able. I don't think I can pull it up in time, but the Blues under Bannister had a goal differential above expected of like -3 to 5 or somewhere. It was pretty bad. And under Montgomery, it was like that, but positive at least. Like it was a huge turnaround for a team that, like we said, all season, is still struggling and is still like not where it should be. And to have them fighting and to have them competing when again just so many tough losses, I think A tiers is right.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Doug Armstrong. We had him in S tier last time. There have been some moves to grade him on since then, right? He acquired Cam Fowler. He traded away P.O. Joseph.
We did that post Cam Fowler, did we not?
Did we? I didn't think we had because he wasn't on our last tiers. I think it was like just before.
All right.
I think it was early December when we did it.
But we traded for Fowler in November, and maybe it was just that he hadn't like played a game or played much yet.
Maybe.
Well, regardless.
Anyways, so we had him in S tier, but the P.O. Joseph trade, the Fowler trade. Now that we have at least the context of how it worked out at this point, terminated Brandon Saad's contract and traded away Scott Perunovich to the New York Islanders. What do you like? Do you think Army is still sort of like the hardball GM that we have come to really appreciate this season? Do you think some of his recent moves are not so good? Where do you put Army in this ranking?
The Saad loss is tough because I really was just confused that they didn't get anything in return for Saad.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was a bad contract, but I really thought that there could have been something, and maybe pulling the trigger on that earlier. Getting not a haul, excuse me. That was a joke. Getting a return of any kind for Perunovich, though, sort of, in my mind, a little bit negates them. So I don't know. I think I'd probably say like A tier or so. I mean, the Cam Fowler move, you could continue to say S tier, and I think that could be, but it's clear that this team needed help more than Cam Fowler last year, and perhaps the right deal wasn't around. We could say all these things, but they didn't make a move, or Armstrong didn't make a move, and maybe that was for the best long term. But to not really hear any buzz around that either, and to not move the Saad contract for a return, I would say A tier, but I could hear S or B, or I'll hear what you have to say as well.
Just to provide a little more context, we did our last tiers one on like December 9th, December 10th, around then, and then the Fowler trade was the 14th, so it was like right after.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think,
I mean, the Fowler move was significant.
It was significant, and it got the Blues back in the race. I mean, like that more than anything was sort of the along with the hiring of Jim Montgomery was sort of like the inflection point. I was disappointed that they couldn't get something in return for Saad, but the fact that he got him to agree to a contract termination, I think, is sort of like the second best scenario we could have hoped for. And so for that reason, I think it's still a plus overall, not as big a plus as it could have been. Scott Perunovich trade, I don't know, like there's not, a whole lot to consider there just because we got, what was it, like a sixth round pick?
Yeah, a fifth round.
A conditional fifth rounder, next year or whatever. Not a whole lot to, go off of there. But anyways, I still think overall he has been a good GM. I'll be really curious to see what he does next as we approach the trade deadline here. I think there could be a lot of shakeup, and he could really put himself back into S tier, or maybe even fall further. We'll see. But I think A tier is probably where he belongs. I'll just drop him behind Monty. But yeah.
Also, I just want to point out for, I guess, the Scott Perunovich update. So he has played in, I believe, every game since he got traded. So the Islanders haven't been sitting him yet. And not only that, in his last game, he played almost 25 minutes. So they've been trying him on a lot of top pairs. Scored 2 points in his first game, and everyone was like, why do we let him go? Like, this is Jake Wallman all over again. And he has 1 point since.
Yeah.
As well as like a minus -1 rating. So
yeah. I hope he can put something together. I hope he becomes a legit player, but still too early to tell, I think. Well, those are our tiers, our grades for the Blues here at the 2/3 mark of the season. I think looking forward, we're expecting them to remain out of the playoff race. We're both sort of have given up hope on the Blues, wild card spot dream. But I think there's a lot of good that can be done for the Blues team moving forward for the rest of the season. And, I'll still be watching this to see how that looks, how a lot of these other young players develop. Whenever Snuggerud gets called up, Dvorsky, could we see those guys this season? Both of them, hopefully, Snuggerud for sure. And then what other moves, what other transactions can the Blues make? I'll be really curious to see what we've got, on the docket for the trade market and all that. There's been some interesting Blues trade rumors going around that we'll devote some time to in some upcoming episodes. A lot of names sort of thrown out as potential like players that'll be sold by the Blues. So we'll devote some time to that coming up soon. But here on February 9th, we've got Four Nations coming up this week. I believe the first game is being played on February 12th, which is this Wednesday. We'll do some Four Nations talk, especially keeping an eye on Colton Parayko and Jordan Bennington, who are representing Team Canada. So that's going to be really exciting to see some best-on-best hockey. If you weren't aware of that already, definitely check it out. Team USA, Team Canada, Team Sweden, and Team Finland are sort of doing a round robin before doing a tournament style, like a bracket style tournament to crown a winner. It's going to be really fun to see some best on best hockey. I'm super excited, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, on some upcoming episodes. But if you haven't already, and if you've enjoyed what we have talked about here today, We'd appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's especially the best way to help us out. We're almost to 300. Help us get to 300. That would be huge. And we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow and rate wherever you listen. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. If you'd like to follow along with us there, see some cool updates, know when we're going live, all that kind of stuff. But I think that'll do it for us this time. We'll see you next time on Note News. And as always, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.